Welcome to Shining the Light. My name is S.E. Walibwa and my guest today is Sid. How are you, Sid?
I'm doing good, Sonny. How are you?
I'm doing the best I can, man. I don't want to go, all over your intro. I want you to do your intro right now. So,
my name is Sid Mofya. I'm originally from Zambia, and I currently live in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I work in the venture capital space. And enjoy living here. I'm here with my wife and two daughters, and I'm really happy to be here and looking forward to talking about all things tech, all things music, all things Africa. Just a real honor to be here.
So how are you handling the pandemic, though? It's been tough, man. So a lot of people are going through it right now. But a lot of people lost their jobs. Some people still don't believe that we have this pandemic. They don't even wear their mask, but we need to still be wearing our masks right now,
Yeah, so just yesterday, one of my friends, he lives in Arizona. His dad passed away from COVID. So it's real. We've been fortunate. We haven't personally been affected. My family hasn't been affected. But my wife and I had a daughter just at the beginning of this pandemic. So we were dealing with hospitals and so on, going into the hospital during the pandemic. Luckily, I was able to get in and stay with my wife. I know some friends who had trouble just getting into the hospital when, they were giving birth or their spouse was giving birth. Wow. And for us, having our daughter then has just been really a blessing because, I've been able to spend more time with the family because I'm able to work from home.
Man, once again, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
So let's start with your back with where you went. Let's go back to when you were really young, right? Like, where did you start your primary school? I mean, you were born in Zambia, right? What part of Zambia were you born?
So I was born in Chingola, which is a little town. Well, not so little now. In the north part of Zambia, very close to the Congo border. It's within shooting distance, about half an hour from the Congo border. It's a big mining town.
That's on the Copper Belt, right?
It's on the Copper Belt region of Zambia. It's the biggest producer of copper in Zambia. So probably one of the biggest producers of copper as a town in the world. My parents both worked for the mining company there. And that's where I was born. Well, that's where I lived. I was born in another town, but that's where I lived.
But is Chingola like a city right now, or what?
Yeah, I would say it's a small city. It's definitely urban. Most of the people there are either college educated or they're craft people working, doing craft jobs in the mines.
You mentioned that when you started your school, you were able to get into an international school, which was more like a private primary school, right?
Yes. So I had two options basically. My parents had two options. They could send me to the public school, or they could send me to this small school that was mostly where a lot of the expat kids went. The expats came in to work in the mines or to teach or whatever. And this school primarily was for them. My parents were. My dad was an artisan, so he fixed vehicles for the mines. My mom was an administrative officer. So they were not in the kind of upper echelons of society. And my dad actually had to fight quite hard. Both my mom and dad had to fight quite hard to get me into school. And they had to have quite a vision. So what my dad would do was whenever he came back home from work, he was a very good artist. He had these blank pieces of card, like playing card size. And he would draw on one side picture of a dog. He would write dog the word dog on the other side. And you'd have, literally hundreds of these cards, and you'd sit down with me every day after he comes back from work teaching me. So in the area where we lived, all the other kids didn't speak English, but I started to learn to speak English very quickly. And so when I went for interviews at this school, the thing that convinced them to give me a chance was the fact that I knew all these things that I shouldn't have known. They asked me a question and I know the answer and I know more, and they were very fascinated by this. And the person who was the headmaster at the time, he literally stuck his neck out to try to get me into the school, and I give him a lot of credit for that. His name is Mr. Kitchen.
Mr. Kitchen, huh?
Yeah, Jim Kitchen, yeah.
So and also you developed some writing skill at a young age, right? Because you talked about your essay, that you wrote and you sort of kind of went viral, even though we didn't have even though we didn't have the internet at that time,
It went as viral as
in that time,
So I guess viral was the school had a magazine, and if your story made it into the school magazine, that qualified as viral.
Yes.
So there was one time I can't even remember what I had. I must have had something that it required me to go into hospital. So I was in hospital for about a week. But it wasn't, whatever I had wasn't so bad because, I had fun in that hospital. I was making friends with all the nurses and so on, and they, loved coming to chat with me. And so when I went back to school, I wrote about my experience in hospital. Just as they say, what did you do at the weekend? And I said, well, I was in hospital, and this is what happened at the hospital. And I wrote this story. And all of a sudden, the teachers are like, "Oh, this is amazing! Oh, gotta put it in the school magazine." And I was just like, just writing what happened. How much fun I had. But I guess it was different from the usual story. So there we go. Yeah, so it went viral, I guess.
Yeah. So, but what was the real inspiration behind the article?
I think. And I guess I didn't know this at the time, but I think I did love to tell stories. And I guess to me, it just felt natural that something interesting happens and you tell a story about it. And I didn't realize that was something, different. I just felt like that's what you do. And I guess, I've kind of lived in that world of, telling stories and, yeah, I think that if I could give a guess as to what the inspiration was, that could be it.
Did you join like acting club or Christian club or debating club? I remember at one point I tried to join this debating club, so unfortunately we were just learning, some dictionary words, so it didn't really go well for me, so.
Yeah, I did the debate. I wasn't very good at debate, but I was good at acting. So whenever there was a production, I would be one of the main actors in the production. And I found I was also good at music. So I started playing piano and guitar. I taught myself to play both those instruments. I say taught myself. I think it was learning with friends. Hey, I've found something new, and let me show you. And they show you, and next time you do the same, and so on. We didn't have instruments ourselves, so most of the time we would borrow instruments until my dad bought this little keyboard, and it was an electric keyboard, so you plug it in and there's a fan on this side that goes round and round and round, and it bellows, and the bellows make the organ sound. And we played this thing to death. My brother and I would play it and play it and play it until the fan broke. And then when it breaks, we'll open it up and get super glue and fix the fan. played again, and that's how we learned to play musical instruments. And I think self-expression has been a big part of my life.
Mm. So your dad really liked what you were doing as far as music is concerned, right? Like, did they say this guy might be really be good with music, or did they say we really don't want to push this guy towards me because that's what
I wish I knew.
We want this guy to continue to be, if he's going to be a doctor,
I wish I knew exactly what he thought, because I never tested that. So in school, I was doing good in school. I was doing sciences and math and doing well in those. And in my mind, I wanted to be a doctor when I grew up. So I think that wasn't tested. But he loved music and never could play. But he always would come and, whenever we were playing and he comes back from work and we're playing, he would come and, try to play something or try to join in some way. So he was always very, very interested, and he listened to a lot of music. So he was for sure part of the inspiration for, doing music, but I never threatened him with, I'm quitting everything to go do music.
Did you guys, when you were growing up, you guys had, like in most African countries, people have, the fields where they grow crops, or they have like the kettle post or something like that.
Oh, man. Yeah. We did, and I never understood it because we had to walk. So my mom and dad had, they had regular jobs. And then at the weekend, some weekends would go to this plot to go and do farm work. And you had to leave at like 4 or 5 a.m. so that you could get there and do work before it gets too hot. And it would be, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours of walking. At least that's how it felt to me, to get there and then come back again. And, so some of these places, even when we had a vehicle to take us there, it couldn't get to the place. So you take the vehicle to a certain point and then you have to still walk. We did that, and harvest time was fun, but it felt like harvest time was way shorter than the time we spent going to plant and weed and all that. And it was all coming at the expense of playing soccer and playing music. So it all felt like, oh gosh, why are we doing this?
Yeah, it's an African life, and it's really fascinating. I still miss during those times, But I want to ask you this though. Even though you went to a school that was mainly for expatriates or an international school, and you really didn't go to a public school, right? But I want to ask you about the actual syllabus. Do you know if some of those public schools the syllabus was influenced by, the colonial masters?
For sure, it was. And I think I realized early, maybe not so early, and was frustrated by how, we weren't learning Zambian stuff. The syllabus was pretty much a copy and paste of a British curriculum. That to me was a source of frustration, even as a teenager looking at this and thinking, why are we learning all this European stuff, and why aren't we learning more about, our culture and our history? Of course, there was some of that, but it was definitely dominated by the European syllabus. We were using Cambridge syllabuses, and when we did exams, it was Cambridge exams.
So basically, when you finish your high school, they will be taken to the UK to be right.
Yeah, so it wasn't guaranteed that you would do that, but there was a way. So the high school I went to, they did have a scholarship program where you applied for it, and every year they would send about 30 people to the UK and the US to go and study and the idea was to come back and work for the mining companies.
Before we get there, Sid, and I want to apologize for sort of kind of butchering your last name. Is Mofya, not Mofya. So
Mofya.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mofya. That sounds nice.
Yeah, think of it like the mafia would just make the
mafia. I thought about that, right away. But I wanted to ask you, because when I was talking about, when you finish your high school, I meant to say that the grading was not done in Zambia, right?
At this point, I think it was.
Okay.
However, basically the exam was. And I need to be careful here.
Isn't it why
my memory might fail me. I think we were still doing Cambridge exams.
Yeah.
At high school, they were written in Cambridge, and they were graded. I'm not sure, but fundamentally, they were not ours. Put it that way. Yeah.
Yes.
I can say that for sure.
Yeah. Sid, when I was talking to you, but let me go back a little bit. Zambia became independent in 1964, and I believe KK was a president from that time until 1991.
Yeah.
I mean, we revered KK, so. But that's one thing that maybe we can talk about this later, because these African leaders, they started on the right path. They started right. They stuck right. But as their tenure progresses, they turn into something else. But I haven't heard really bad things about KK. And I believe KK was a president from that time until 1991, if I'm not mistaken. Did Zambia experience economic independence during that time?
From 64 to 91?
From 64. Because we can experience, the political independence, but then economic independence is something else, right?
Yeah, I would say my answer is no. Because we were heavily and still are heavily dependent on copper and copper exports into a market that we don't have a say over. So, our copper is sold on the London Metal Exchange, and we are at the mercy of whoever, whatever the market is doing there. And basically our economy went up and down depending on the price of copper. So we never truly got economic independence. We're still, under World Trade Organization policies, which, as you and I know, disadvantaged us. So we were suffering from that. So I think the simple answer is no, we didn't.
We'll talk about Botswana next time when you ask me about Botswana during this time.
Yeah, I'm curious because I kind of think of Botswana as one country, at least in sub-Saharan Africa, that did better in that respect than others. But I'd love to hear your view at some point.
It's not that bad, especially when you're looking at from the outside. It's always that case, but when you are within, there are a lot of things that we can talk about, and we're still struggling with those things,
Right.
Yeah. But it's not as bad as other countries, though, Let's go back to your school when you were like 14 to 17. It looks like you were the best student in that school.
Yes.
And any awards or for your excellence? Did you win a scholarship?
Yeah. So to get to the school, it was a school owned by the conglomerate of mining companies that were existing on the Copper Belt, and they had this secondary school, high school. So you had to qualify to get into the school, but they also gave scholarships every year. I think every year they gave, I can't remember if it's 5 or 10 scholarships. for the top 5 or 10 students in the country who qualified to go to the school. So I was fortunate to get one of those scholarships for my high school education. I worked hard, but I also I think I found a way to be able to be efficient with my time and figure out that, basically we're doing one thing, we're following a syllabus, and that's the answer. So I would very early in the school year, I'll literally get the syllabus and plan out how I'm going to make sure that I know everything that's on the syllabus. And the outcome of that was I got a lot of academic awards for good performance.
And then take us to how you ended up being, going to the university abroad. Yeah.
So after high school, you can either go straight to the University of Zambia, or you can, again, there was another scholarship program, which was for about 30 or so students every year. They would study A-levels in Zambia, again, Cambridge. And then after those A-levels, that's the pre-qualification to be able to go to a college in the UK. So I applied for that scholarship. I really, really wanted to go study somewhere else. And interestingly, at that point, the decision I had to make was, all along I'd said I wanted to be a doctor. And the scholarship did not offer the option of being a doctor. I could be, I could be anything, but these are the options: chemical engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, geologist, maybe one other. So I looked at those and I said, well, okay, chemical engineer, that's kind of close to medicine. It's not. But I think the desire to move to another country was stronger in my mind than being a doctor. So I chose that, and I was lucky to get that scholarship. It was a full ride scholarship to study engineering. So I went and studied at the University of Sheffield in the UK.
It must have been joy, man, to your family, being the first one to go to college, right? To go to university.
Yeah.
To go to the university and also to study abroad.
Yeah, it was a big change. That was the first time I was stepping onto a plane when I went to college in Sheffield. Big culture shock, and just learning everything. I thought I knew how to speak English, and I heard the people in Sheffield speak English, and I had no idea what they were saying because they speak in a different dialect. Luckily, there were some other Zambians who were there before, and there was a good friend of mine that I went with, and we were able to, keep a sense of home when you're there.
Wow. So did you suffer did you say you suffered some sort of culture shock?
Yeah, of course, in many respects. I remember even just the very first day we arrived. We had, my friend and I were in the same kind of apartment building. So we went to the nearest shops just to get a cup of tea and something, because we felt cold. We were in these heavy coats. Other people were like, "Ooh, why have these people got all these big heavy coats?" For us, it was freezing. This was September, so it's not that cold. And then we go to the shop to get tea, and I think she was asking us if we wanted milk in the tea, and we just had no idea what she was saying. Ultimately, we just took what she gave us and went away laughing.
No, I remember when we first got here. some of our students, they had to go, they dropped, they ended up going back home, the embassy, had to arrange something for them to go back,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because because of culture shock,
Yeah.
I want to ask you this because, and this is sensitive. You don't have to actually, answer it. I remember, working hard to try to come to school abroad, but there were some other, kids of, corrupt members of our society,
Mm-hmm.
who didn't even have to work hard,
Right.
to go to school,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you guys had the same thing in Zambia that you
I
know
think
of, or no?
I think that happened. It's hard to know if it happened in our case, but I know in general it happened that kids of people who were well off, had connections, could get access to scholarships that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to know like specific people and so on. But it definitely did happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure even now it definitely does happen.
And so you mentioned that you started business when you were in college.
I studied engineering. I studied business later on after working for a while.
No. Did you start your own business, or you started?
Oh yes,
yeah.
Yes, I did. So when I was in college, in my second year, I did an exchange program where I came to the U.S. Actually, I went to Minnesota, and I was working there for the summer. And while I was there, I met a guy who was starting a computer business, basically assembling computers. This was the PC age, people are assembling PCs, and and I knew that in Zambia, it would be difficult to get PCs. It would be expensive, and also the government was trying to encourage local production, so they had zero rated the import of computer parts, so that you could assemble them in Zambia. And the completely assembled computers were heavily taxed, so there was some arbitrage there. So because I was in the UK, basically I could order those computer parts, send them to Zambia, have folks assemble them in Zambia into computers and sell them. So that was our little side hustle that we were running.
Wow, that's a good good side hustle, and then did you say did you drop out of college for a second, or no?
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah, but
I truly believed that was going to become a big business, and it didn't. But after college, I went back to Zambia.
Especially at that time, though, right?
It looked like the internet has grown in the way I kind of imagined that the computer revolution would grow, even in Africa, because I just imagined that everybody will eventually have a computer. And this was Bill Gates' vision as well, right?
Yeah, I was thinking
but it turned out he was too early, and it was actually the phone that was the the manifestation of that dream.
Yeah.
So I after college, I was trying to decide what to do. My visa in the UK was running out, and I couldn't get a job in the UK, which would secure me being able to stay in the UK. So I decided I'll go to Zambia. I got a job in Zambia. So while I was doing that job, I was trying to build this business as well. If I didn't have the business in Zambia, I might have chosen to fight harder to stay in the UK and figure out a way to do it. But that business to me was like, well, I think let me go to Zambia and try to make this a bigger business. In the end, it didn't work. It didn't work out, and I learned a lot from the experience. But it was my first taste of like real entrepreneurship.
You mentioned that you never, even when you were in the UK, you continued to write music.
Oh yeah.
Was it something that continued to sort of kind of uplift you, even when you were down? At least you could pick up the piano or the guitar or something to.
It helped me a lot. So when I was a kid, my dream,
let's get into this music thing, man.
When I was a kid, my measurement of having arrived was when I have a piano, then I know I've arrived. That's it. That I'm good. Like a real piano. Yeah. So when I was in college, I used to get a stipend, which was meant for my my living expenses.
Right.
I saved up on that stipend, and I bought this electric piano, really like a Yamaha proper electric piano, weighted keys and everything, full size. Probably more expensive than an actual piano. And that for me was like, yeah, I've arrived. And I would sit in my room and I'd play the piano, I'd write songs, and it really helped me to process a lot of things. College life, you're dealing with relationships, and dealing with just being far from home and so on. That was so helpful for me.
Homesick and all that, Yeah. And so was it after your graduation when you had that song that you performed?
Yeah, so the very first song I performed publicly was a song I'd written round about when I just met Becky, who's now my wife. And I can't remember, it was either just before or just after my graduation. And I was invited to this event. It was an Afro-Caribbean kind of mixer event. And I'd just written this song, and I really loved the vibe of it. And I knew she was going to be there. so played it.
Hold on that one. So when you write your music, you actually write the notes and
everything. Well, I don't write the notes on paper. Yeah. What I write is the words. And then I play it enough that the melody is stuck in my head. And then these days I just record a lot of voice notes. So I don't read music. I listen.
It just comes out like that, natural.
I play. And there are lots of people that don't read music.
I know. Right? Yeah. Wow. So okay, continue. So it was around the time.
Yeah. So I knew she was going to be there, and I wanted to impress her. So. And clearly it worked. We've been married now for 18 years.
That's wonderful, man. That's really wonderful. No, you never thought about playing music full time during that,
No. So during that time, I started. It was my real kind of introduction to songwriting. I entered a few songwriting competitions in which I wasn't successful. So I decided, well, no, this is probably not going to be my full-time thing. But I'll certainly, for me, it never goes away. You're in the shower and all of a sudden there's a new melody. Oh, I like this. Let's see if I can work with this. And so I've just really embraced it as something that's part of me. And there'll always be an output of music in some shape or form from me. Whether it's my full-time thing or not doesn't matter as much. And who knows, maybe if it's my full-time thing, I might not like it as much because there's more pressure. And I like a wide variety of things as well. So I feel making music my full-time thing might reduce my enjoyment of it, but it's certainly a big part of my life.
What about the acting part of it?
So the acting,
you played Jesus at some point, you know.
Yeah. So when I was in, so after the business in Zambia didn't work, I had a job in Zambia, and I was approached to go back to the UK, to go and work for Shell. So moved to Chester, which is in the northwest of the UK, doing the chemical engineering thing that I was trained for.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there in Chester, they do what are called mystery plays. These are in the olden times, like in the medieval ages, they used to do these plays like across a town to tell the Bible stories. So they would have maybe the Fisherman's Guild. They would do these plays, and they would tell the story of Noah. And then they would have so they would have like it was a big community production, and they would do them all at the same time. And then that naturally stopped, but they were revived. And every 5 years, they'll do a big community production with like 500 people involved, where they put up the production. The plays were done. They were still performed in medieval English, and they were they ran for I think they ran for 2 weeks. So basically 2 weeks every night you're doing the play. So when I saw the auditions for those mystery plays for the 2008, I thought, whoa, that would be fun. That would be fun to do.
Right.
So I applied for it, and they send you things like characters to audition for. So they send me they send you the script. So you practice the script, and then you go and audition that script. So I looked at the options that they had. I think they had Joseph from the Old Testament. They had maybe I can't remember, Moses, and then they had Jesus.
Yeah.
So I look at the Jesus one, and I think, well, why not? Why not try? Why not try for the Jesus role? I hadn't acted much as an adult, so this was like a little bit audacious.
But you have studied the teachings of Jesus, though, right? Like you.
Yeah. So growing up as a Christian, I knew the teachings. It doesn't necessarily make you a good actor, but I just thought, why not? The worst they can say is no, and if they say no, they'll probably, find another role for me.
Right.
So I went and auditioned, and I could tell when I did the audition that the director liked the idea of me being Jesus. I think he was thinking, Black Jesus. That's interesting. And he gave me some feedback on my acting, which was by and large positive. And he says, you have a good stage presence. You're very centered. We'll let you know. So I went home, and I wasn't expecting much, because I just thought, well, always worth a try. But they came back to me and said, we want you to play this role of Jesus.
Right.
And I was over the moon. It was such a fun experience doing that. Right.
So but that was before you traveled to the US, right?
Yeah, so that was the year before we traveled to the US. So so the next year I went to do my business.
But you were still with Shell, though, right?
Yeah, I was still with Shell. So this was everybody was a volunteer. Everybody who was doing this was, I think, except maybe the director, who was, and I think even he was a volunteer. But it was, just a big community production. Some of the people I was acting with had done it like, it's every 5 years. So they'd done it like 4 times, like over a period of 20 years,
Right.
So I was doing it for the very first time. I mean, it's one thing if I ever go back to England, I would love to do again. It's such a great experience. Just brings community together, and it's hard work because you literally, for the 2 or 3 months that you're preparing, it's literally every day. You get back home, you eat, and you go rehearse, and literally every day. And then you do the production, and it's such a intense, but it's such a high doing it.
Yeah, and so the play actually, inside the play, you guys are using the actual, scriptures on the play?
There's some yeah. So it's based on kind of taking the scriptures and turning it into a kind of a storyline.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And there's a lot of music, so it was musical.
It was musical.
So I got to sing as well. And a lot of it is also because it was in medieval English. A lot of it is conveying what you're saying through your actions and intonation, because with medieval English, you won't get all the words and exactly what they mean. There's some words in there that you don't understand. So it was important to be able to convey, the emotion and what you're saying more through your actions than through the words. Wow. And the if you've ever seen like a Shakespearean play, it was kind of like that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, Yeah. And so let's transition now to when you were going to thank you for sharing about that, to when you were going to the US, right? That like the next year you were going to the US. You were still with Shell at that time, right?
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Why would I leave Shell? Is that the question?
Yeah. That was. I mean, like to work for Shell. So I was thinking that maybe you were still with Shell when you came here in the United States of America.
No, I wasn't. I left Shell. And I had good reason to, in my mind.
Yes.
I enjoyed the experience, and it was really good experience. It was my first proper stint at a job after college. When I went back to Zambia, I worked for a company in Zambia. We worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers for, I think it was about 8 months.
I know Pricewaterhouse. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I went to work for Shell, and that was 6 years. Mm-hmm. So it's where I learned to be a professional. It's where I learned to become an engineer. So I went through the engineering training program and got certified as an engineer. So I learned so much from that experience. Mm-hmm. But it was evident to me pretty early that I was never an engineer. Mm-hmm. Okay. I could do it, but it was never the thing that was going to be, there were some people, they're hardcore engineers, and that's what they love. And I loved working with people like that because...
But that's what you had done in school, though, right?
That's what I studied. And I told you the reason why I studied engineering was because I was able to go study abroad.
Right.
So at this point, it was the point of reckoning for me. Like, well, I can do this, but there's a part of me that dies the more I do this. So I decided, no, I'm not going to do this forever. So I left Shell, and I worked for. I decided I was plotting a path to return to Africa. I'm not quite sure. I wasn't quite sure how that path was going to unfold. I had considered going to work for Shell in Africa, but I knew that would be in the line of work that I'd been in, which to me wasn't
right.
It wasn't an option really. So I started thinking, right, how can I find my way back in Zambia or somewhere in Africa? So I left Shell to take a job with the prison service. And to an outsider, this makes zero sense. But in my mind, it made perfect sense because my destination was to go back to Africa. And the prison service offered me a chance to do government work, which was something that I would very likely be doing when I return to Africa. So it's interesting. So I worked for the prison service, and I think it was about 9 months in when I was working for the prison service. Very interesting job. It was energy management, so it was related to my shell work in that way. About 9 months in, my manager calls me and he says, "Hey, you don't have to answer this, but I really want to ask you this. Why did you leave Shell to come and work for us?" So the same question that you're asking me,
right?
Yeah, I can't, and I think I told him something to the effect of, I thought it would be a different experience, which it was, and a great experience while I was there. After about a year of that job, I approached my manager and said, I'd like to take a sabbatical. I want to go study business. And my intention at that time was take the sabbatical, study business, come back, and then figure out what I'm going to do. But I took the sabbatical, went to Austin, Texas to study business. After I finished with business school, there was no way I was going back to prison service. So I called my manager to tell him I'm not coming back. And he says, "I knew." It's like, okay. But going to Austin, Texas was all about, getting some business skill. I'd learned a lot from the business failure before. And my idea was, I'm going to be doing something to do with business in Africa. There's going to be some government involvement somewhere along the way. So I felt like I had a good set of different skills that I can bring to bear to return to Africa. And so 2010, we moved to Tanzania.
Okay, hold on, because
I'm moving too fast.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You were at Austin.
Yes.
Acton, right? And I read somewhere that that if you survive Acton, you can do anything.
It's a very intense program.
It's very intense program. So I read somewhere that if you survive Acton, you can actually do anything. So is that how you felt when you moved your family to Africa? Because that's what you were about to talk about, that, right?
Yeah. Maybe let me talk a little bit about Acton. Because Acton was a 2-year program squashed into 1 year. And literally we went to Austin, Texas, and just worked. I worked my socks off that year. So I was lucky because I went with my wife and our daughter, and she was able to pick up a lot of the slack in terms of, she did all the shopping, all the cooking, all the washing, and all I had to do was literally get up, study, eat, and sleep. Wow. And that was it. That's all I could do. And, and then I took the day off on Saturday to at least spend some time with the family. But it was a very, very intense year. And I wondered how guys who were not married made it, because, they also had to do all the other stuff, right? They had to eat and all that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it was very, very intense, but very rewarding.
Well, we thank God for your wife, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know where I would be without her.
Right. Definitely, she's a wonderful woman. And then you went to Africa, right?
Yes. Yeah. So at that point, after Acton, initially we were kind of looking at everything. Everything was an option. There were options to stay in the US, options to go back to the UK, thinking about going to Africa. And I actually got really stressed just trying to navigate all these options. And then, I think one weekend I had a conversation with Becky, my wife, and we just said, can we just take some things off the table? and just focus on, one thing that we're going to do. So we took staying in the US off the table. We took going back to the UK off the table and decided Africa's the direction. And that by itself just removes a lot of stress. And then when I was graduating,
so she didn't oblige.
Sorry?
She didn't oblige the move to Africa since she's from the UK. So
she didn't want to go back to the UK.
Okay. That's cool.
And the US was more uncertain in terms of what the opportunities would be. I mean, Africa was uncertain as well.
Right.
But, we decided that that's what we were going to focus on. And I'm thankful that my wife is so supportive and allows me to think of crazy things like leaving Shell to go work for the prison service and moving to Africa and things like that. It does make it easier.
She trusts you.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for that, for sure. So we decided Africa was it. And so I got an opportunity to go work in Tanzania with an American organization that was looking to start a local office in Tanzania. They'd been working there for a while. They had partnerships in place, but they needed a physical presence there. So I went, and this was my opportunity to put feet on the ground and figure out, what I was going to do,
And you mentioned that, that going back to Africa, became one of your toughest moments, right?
Yeah, it got tough because, my wife.
But also I believe that he taught you a lot of things, right, about life.
It did. So my wife, we discovered that my wife had an autoimmune condition, which was triggered when we were in Dar es Salaam. And she got really sick, and the doctors, most doctors that we saw had no idea how to deal with this. And this is still the case, by the way, even here in California, because it's not that rare, but it's a relatively rare condition. And most mainstream doctors do not deal with it. So you have to find specific doctors that can deal with it. So Tanzania was wonderful, but it was also tough in that respect. We had to adjust our lifestyle quite significantly in terms of diet, and we learned that my wife had electrical sensitivity, which means that if she's in a place where there's a lot of electromagnetic frequencies in the air, so if the house has poor wiring, for example, it means there's lots of loose electrical fields, then that affects her nerves and she gets really weak. And we found that she had gluten intolerance, so we had to change our diet, and lots of changes there. So so this was, it was, I guess, if you kind of look back, it looked like this was the fulfillment of what I'd wanted all along: return to Africa and do something amazing.
Right.
But it was also at the same time the toughest moment of certainly our married life, trying to deal with that. And during the time when we're in Tanzania was also the time when my dad in Zambia was really ill, and he subsequently passed away 2012. So kind of having to deal with all that during that time, that was
wow.
That was some tough years there.
It was tough to process,
Yeah.
And you guys were still young, and so you decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, maybe to relieve some of the stress, huh?
Yeah. Last year I read somewhere that there's this famous Spanish tennis player, right?
Uh-huh.
He had difficulties, especially at the towards the end of the match, she would just like collapse or just lose it. So she decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, just to face, those giants, those fears.
Interesting. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And right now she's doing pretty good.
Oh wow! Well,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah, it's an amazing experience. I was just talking to my friend who I climbed it with yesterday, and we just realized that next year will be the 10-year anniversary of us having climbed Kilimanjaro. So
wow.
we might do it again.
Might do it again, huh?
I don't know. We'll see. But it was an amazing experience. Just from many angles. From what you experience of the climate, you start off tropical, and you do everything from tropical to Arctic by the time you get to the top of the mountain. And then managing your body in such a way that you don't go too far ahead of your body. There was a point probably about 2/3 on where I thought I wouldn't make it because I was having trouble breathing. I was throwing
up. Which month was this?
Sorry?
Which month?
We did it in February, and ours was quite unique because we summited on February 29th.
Wow.
So we actually spent that extra day in 2012 on the crater of Mount Kilimanjaro. So we kind of feel like we're in a bit of a little special club of people that have been on the crater of Mount Kilimanjaro on a leap day of that leap year.
So what is the experience when you are up there? When you're on the summit?
It feels really strange. It feels like another world, especially at night, because you're above the clouds. The soil looks and feels different. I mean, I don't know what the moon looks like, but it felt to me like the moon. And you're so high up that it's hard to sleep. So at night we'll put the tents up and get into our tents, and we're awake most of the time because it's just so high up and our bodies are not used to that altitude. Couldn't sleep, but wouldn't change the experience for the world. There's a slight smell of sulfur coming from the crater. There's snow and ice on the other side. It's just a different world, and the clouds are below you.
But it's beautiful at the same time, right?
So beautiful, so beautiful. It's, I mean, if you can do it, do it. It's a wonderful experience.
Wow. So going down, how's the feeling going down the mountain?
Going down is much easier than going up. So when we went down, there was some parts where it was like very sandy and you almost like just slide down. And then as you come down, because you're getting lower and lower, you start to feel the blood starting to rush back into the body, and that, like, you feel like it's like an invigoration, exhilaration that comes from that extra oxygen just filling up the body and the brain, and you get down and you just feel like you're on top of the world.
As you're saying this, I can hear the music at the same time, like.
Yeah, I've never written about that. Maybe I should.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So did you feel like you now you can conquer, whatever comes your way, after climbing the mountain?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if it did, but it certainly, I think it humbles you in a way, the mountain, because you realize, there were people that were turning back, that didn't make it to the summit. And I not for one moment did I think I got to the summit because I was better than those people. In some respects, I thought maybe I got luckier because we didn't have rain, or we had guides that made sure that we slowed down, or any number of factors could mean you don't get to the summit. So I guess it for me, it kind of humbled me a little bit about, there are factors outside of my control that, as much as I want world domination, sometimes the world will not be dominated, right? But there's also like an underlying good confidence that comes from doing something like that. It's like, it's something I can always look back to. I said, I remember the very moment, I can see it clearly in my head where I felt I'm not going to make it, but I'll just go step by little step. And doing that meant I did get to the top of the mountain. So that's something I can always look back on and draw energy from.
And then later on, you decided to return to the United States of America, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that journey was
to go into the venture world, right?
Yeah. So when I was still in Tanzania, I started working with an old friend of mine. We were friends from way back in high school. Working on an African venture fund. Neither of us had experience in the venture space, and we spent quite a bit of time, figuring out what this would be like, and we decided we needed some experience. So I started looking in the venture space, trying to make connections with people. There are not that many people in Dar es Salaam, so I started to look to Silicon Valley, and I applied for a Kaufman Fellowship, which was like an apprenticeship program for getting into venture, and was fortunate to get onto that fellowship, partly through the fellowship, but also like just increasingly meeting more and more people, talking to everybody who would talk to me. I ended up getting a position with the Draper Venture Network. And decided to move to Silicon Valley, and it was also timely for us because from a health perspective, for my wife, we felt that this would be a good opportunity to find some of the best doctors for environmental illnesses like my wife are in this area. So it was a no-brainer for us to move here.
So while you were in Dar es Salaam, how was the tech world at that time?
There were not that many. There wasn't that much activity.
Right.
There were a few funds. I spoke to everyone that I could find. I could count them on one hand. And it's really funny that when I moved to Silicon Valley, within a couple of weeks of being in Silicon Valley, I'd met more people doing tech in Africa than I had in 2 or 3 years of trying to figure out how this works in Africa.
Wow. So don't worry, because remember, I'm going to be editing this, right? So should we continue? We good, so we can finish it up.
We are happy to continue.
Okay, good. Yeah. I just want to check.
How's it feeling for you?
It's feeling good. It's feeling. I'm loving it, man.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm really, really, really loving it.
Cool.
So, yeah. So you got hired by by Draper Venture Network, and you officially moved to Silicon Valley. That's what you just said right now. Before we can discuss what you do, talk a little bit about the Silicon Valley experience or culture.
It's a different culture to what I've experienced in other places I've worked. I very quickly discovered how, first of all, it was fast. People wanted to move fast.
Yeah.
People wanted to get things done fast. And when I moved, I'd moved. Most of my work experience had been in Shell, where speed wasn't what was valued. Safety was what was valued. If you're running an oil refinery, you don't want to kill people because you moved fast. So I had internal changes to make with the way I worked That was part of my culture shock, where I have, I've got something to do, and I'm working it so that I make sure it's rock solid. And when all I need to do is make sure that there's something, and then we can refine as we go. So more of the lean startup approach.
Right.
So that was one thing. Another thing was I was pleasantly surprised by how open and willing people were to help and connect you to others. So you'd speak to one person, and typically meet one person, and you should meet this person. So I found it very quick and easy to build a network of people, because people were willing to, this is what you're doing, you should speak to that person. And I speak to that other person, this is what you're doing, you should speak to this person. So you build a network very, very quickly. The flip side of that is building deep relationships with people seems to take more time, because the breadth is there for sure, with a pretty high level of trust, even in the breadth of the relationships. But building the deep kind of relationships that some people have that have been here for 20 years, that takes time. And having been here for 6 years now, I'm just starting to feel like I've built enough deep relationships that I can feel like I'm a local, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I remember when we first met, but I think my wife met you before I met you. I think it was in 2015, if I remember. Yeah. Yeah. So I think you were still growing into a citizen of Silicon Valley at that time. So
I look green behind the ears.
Yeah. So if you are comfortable, Sid, please tell us the type of work you do, and why they call you the network Spider-Man.
So that's still on our website, right? I might have that removed
because I had to research about you, my brothers.
So the Draper Venture Network is an alliance of venture capital firms around the world. And all these funds, about 25 funds around the world, they're investing independently, but they all come together to share deals and resources and relationships. And I'm part of the team that runs that alliance. And the reason they call me the network Spider-Man was my job was to build relationships for the network with other VCs, with large corporations. So I'd spend a lot of time doing that, and then making these relationships accrue to our broad network. And that as well really helped me to build a network, very quickly, because I was doing it in my job, but I was also doing it outside of my.
And not every early stage company deserves an investment. So what is the best way to know if this is the company to invest in? So what is the calculation here, so to say, or what is the criteria that most investors use before they put their money in?
So for, I guess it's different for different kinds of investor, but for venture investors, ultimately they're looking to invest in a company that's going to be a category leader and become a very big company in its space. So they're typically making many bets, typically 20 or so bets in a fund, knowing that half of those may fail, and another half may return the money, and then half of the half will return the money, and then a small portion will so outperform everything else that the whole thing would have been worthwhile. So in order for that to happen, it needs to be something that the market needs, even though maybe the market might not know it needs. And it needs to be a team that can deliver that. And it needs to be the right time. I think those probably be the three main things at a broad level. And different people kind of cut that up in different ways, and some use data to do it. Some will just use relationships to validate. Some will look at market traction as the indicator, and different people are using different ways to validate how they make the investment.
And so, what is the best way for Black startups to position themselves for funds, especially now during the pandemic?
I think it's the same as any founder. I think doing a lot of work beforehand to understand the investor and what they are focusing on, so that you're not wasting time with investors that are not going to invest in your technology or your space. That's important. I think spending time with other founders who've been successful raising money and learning, because there's a craft to raising money, and some founders are better at it than others. So spending time with founders who've been successful raising money, and a lot of times those founders are willing to help and kind of chat with you. There's some good resources out there. A good resource is NFX, which is a Silicon Valley fund. They've got some amazing resources on fundraising, hiring, and all those kinds of things. They're ex-founders themselves, and they've really done a very good and thoughtful job of putting resources out there available to other founders. First Round Capital do that as well. So using those resources for sure. But I think the expectation for any founder is that they've done their homework before they're talking to the VC, and those that do, they get a second conversation, and then and then a further conversation, and then a check.
And obviously you are one of few Africans employed by a merger, firm in Silicon Valley, and this shows your supreme skill, by the way, and services that because obviously they are needed. But what does that tell you about diversity in the Silicon Valley tech scene?
There's a lot of work to do.
This okay?
Yeah, there's and I don't think anybody would deny that there's a lot of work to do. I think the argument in the past had been that there's a pipeline problem. There's not enough good people available who are Black or ethnic minorities. But the truth is they're harder to find. That is true, but that comes from systemically we arrived at a place where they're harder to find. And for us to fix it, then we need to go back and fix that. But I know lots of funds are putting time and energy into resolving this and fixing it, and it's going to take time. We have to recognize that, but there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and so what is the secret of surviving Silicon Valley pressure? There's a lot of pressure in Silicon Valley, especially when you work in that environment, because of the culture, right?
I think, so my view on that has probably changed from when I joined 6 years ago. I think when I joined 6 years ago, my thought was adapt as much as possible. But I think now it's, and I guess I have to be careful how I say this, because I guess I'm saying it from a position of having been in the industry and then deciding that adapting is not the way to do it. But if you're on the outside trying to get in, I think there's still a lot of value in you bringing your value, not necessarily just adapting to what the industry does. It's both, and it's I think the value that we bring has to be evident, but we have to understand what the industry is and what the industry does, because people are not going to change just for us. So we have to understand that and then bring our power. But I think surrendering our power is not the way to go, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. It does. It does. Wow, that's eye-opening, though. People have different perspectives on it, but I think I like, what you're saying. Let's talk about the impact of startups on African economies. From your own opinion, what spaces should investors be looking for to invest in African startups? And also, I know that tech innovations like M-Pesa and Oshashidi have had global success, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really, what can more African startups do to attract capital?
So is the question, what can startups do to attract capital, or what should investors be investing in?
This is a two-part question, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think my answers to those would be probably two different answers.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with the investors. So I think where I see the most opportunity is, I believe I know the vast majority of African entrepreneurs are doing small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
It's the corner shop. It's the guy who fixes bicycles.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger guys own a shop in town.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all connected by one major systemic problem. There's a severe lack of capital, right? But there also isn't a lack of capital. Mm-hmm. So fundamentally, the ecosystem has enough capital, but that capital is not discoverable. So typically the way it works, if you own a little shop at the market and you need to go buy trinkets to sell in your shop, you borrow from the guy in the shop next door if he has some. Mm-hmm. If he has some, he'll lend it to you. You go buy your trinkets, you bring them back to the shop, you sell your trinkets, you give him back his money just in time for him to go buy his trinkets. Mm-hmm. Now imagine if all that excess money, like your neighbor has excess money and his neighbor and the other guy over there, if all that excess money is in a pool, then nobody would be lacking for capital for what they need to do. And most of what folks need is working capital. Not even, they'll sometimes need, capital for, building a shop and, buying a car and so on. So I think there's a big opportunity for, especially now with blockchain technologies that can transact in small amounts, for pooling capital in an ecosystem itself so that the ecosystem funds itself, so that we're not crying out to Silicon Valley to fund African companies. And there are people that are trying to do this. And I think there's a huge opportunity there. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily look like venture capital. Mm-hmm. It may be a different form of capital. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Another area that I see a lot of opportunity is if we're going to grow as African economies, we need to do that next step of value addition to the products that we make. In Zambia, we're making copper and we're still selling basically copper. We're not adding enough value to it that we capture the value of it. And I think they've done the estimates of, what we produce in Africa and how much value we capture. And it's 2 to 5% of the value of what we capture is captured, of what we produce is captured in Africa. The rest is captured elsewhere. So it doesn't take much to get from 5% to 10%. just that next value addition piece is huge, and again, that's a huge investment opportunity. It's not easy, but if we don't do that, tech innovation will help some, and it has helped because with M-Pesa we're able to move money around freely. But that to me addresses fundamental systemic things that push all the boats up, and all of a sudden you have a renaissance in Africa.
Right. So, Sid, your thought on African startup being led by whites as opposed to be African startups being led by Black people?
I don't have
Is there a problem there? Is there a problem with that, or not necessarily?
I don't have a strong opinion on that, except when an African founder is looking for a white co-founder for the optics. Then in that case, it's meaningless to me.
Right.
But some of the great success stories of African companies are led by Europeans that have a heart for Africa, and are doing great work there. I wouldn't say no to that. And if it helps us move a little bit further, then yes. But if it's for the optics, then no, thank you.
Right.
That's my view.
No, that's no. I like your view. I like your view. Sid, let's talk about the diaspora now. I'm looking at time. Let's look at the diaspora. Global remittances to sub-Saharan grew by 10% to 46 billion in 2018. So what are some ways the diaspora can accelerate the tech scene or innovation in Africa?
There's some really good funds that are investing in African companies. And they will take diaspora checks. I think investing in those funds is valuable because they're investing in founders who are developing skills that we need for the next century. The next century needs new sets of skills, and the tech space is one place where we're developing these new skills. So investing in the funds not only brings the chance of you returning the money, but there's I feel an even more important return, which is where we're creating the workforce that we need for the next few decades in Africa.
So as far as you talk a little bit about about Zambia. How is Zambia doing with innovation in tech? I know South Africa, Kenya, and perhaps Egypt, and Nigeria are at the forefront right now, right?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria are probably the hotspots. Zambia, it's a growing space. There's a great organization there called Bongo Hive that I'm actually on the board for, and they've been the pioneers for trying to build this space in Zambia. They run accelerator programs, they run learning programs. So there's certainly a lot of room for growth. But there's a fledgling community there that's on the up and coming.
Wow, that's cool. Let me go off a little bit. How about soccer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big soccer fan. I watch soccer every weekend. I play every weekend.
Yeah, no.
But there's a big story of our national soccer team in Zambia. We had one of the best teams leading up to the early 90s. Our team was probably one of the top 5 in Africa.
Exactly.
Candidates to go to the World Cup. And then in '93, unfortunately, our team was traveling to Senegal on an Air Force plane, and that plane crashed. It crashed in Gabon.
Yeah, I remember.
And nobody survived, so the whole team died, except a few who somehow managed
behind, like Kalusha Bwala.
Yeah, Kalusha Bwala was lucky. He wasn't on that flight. He was still in I think it was Belgium. So basically the Africa Cup of Nations was the next year in '94, and they rebuilt a team from basically the B team plus Kalusha and one or two others who hadn't been on that flight, and actually managed to get to the finals of that Africa Cup of Nations, losing 2-1 to Nigeria. It was heartbreaking. And then 20 years later, and then the team kind of went on kind of meander, doing good sometimes, doing bad sometimes. But 20 years later, in 2013, the Africa Cup of Nations was being held in Gabon. The final was in Gabon, and our team was playing, and we managed to get to the final. And we played Ivory Coast in the final. It was a draw and went to penalties, and a total of 18 penalties were taken before we kicked the final ball. Yeah. There's actually a documentary, I can send you the link, called A-Team. Which is a great chronicle of this story, and I can't watch that and not feel these very strong emotions, because I was there, and I was a young person in Zambia when this happened, and then 2013 I was watching the team with tears down my eyes, because it was like honoring the guys who had died in Gabon to win the Nations Cup there. Right. We've won it 2 times in my lifetime.
That's
before that was like 74, before I was born. And then the next one was 20 years after.
It was huge though, right?
It was huge. It was huge. It felt like a part of the story is complete now that we've won the Africa Cup of Nations.
So let me ask you something. So why do a lot of African people like to watch European soccer? European soccer league. I mean, everybody's got the Arsenal, Manchester, Liverpool. I mean, like it's huge.
You better ask them.
We can even make money out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's got the best players, or the best discovered players. In a different world, I think.
Let me ask you. Let me rephrase this. Is it because we have some of our African folks now going to Europe to play? Did that accelerate that?
It maybe accelerated it. I know, like for the players in Zambia growing up, like me as a kid growing up, my goal was to go to the UK or to go to the US. And for a lot of African kids, their goal is, whenever I get the opportunity, I'll go, and I want to go to Europe, the West. For the soccer players, for sure, they want to play in the best leagues that are around, and that's certainly the European leagues. But I think more than anything, it was just that programming was available, and it's consistent, and it's consistently the best players. So people develop an affinity for those teams, I remember when I was a kid, the very first game I watched on TV, I still remember this, was Everton against Liverpool.
Okay.
In the FA Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this and I was entranced because there was so much passion in this game. You know, Ian Rush, John Barnes,
Ian Rush, okay.
all these people. It's like, in my mind, were like, there's something like this. You know, it was so enthralling, so exciting. And I think there's, you know, give them credit for having created that, because there is an excitement that they create, and people develop a real affinity to the teams that they choose, you know. So
right. And so what can our African nations do to really improve their standard of soccer? You know what I mean? Because I think we have talent. I think it's just like a problem of programs, right? When these kids are still young, to sort of kind of groom them to be the best. Am I right or no? Maybe finding resources at the same time. I mean,
I think it comes down to resources. I truly believe the talent is there, because I know I learned to play soccer on the African
I know
field.
you're good at soccer.
And when I play now, wherever I play, I can tell that my skill level is pretty good. Learning from streets. And if I, as a kid, had been, you know, given, or at least had access to the resources to like really take that up a level, I could see myself playing for, you know, a great team, whether that's in Africa or elsewhere. But those resources simply are not there. And it's hard to say, let's just put resources into it, because where do we prioritize putting the resources in? But for sure, the answer is resources, I think.
My brother, it has been very, thrilling to be interviewing you, but I have 2 or 3 questions. Maybe we can just finish them up quickly.
Sure.
How do you balance work and family? And also the on the question of mentorship and leadership, if you can touch on that,
So this year has been a real shift for me in terms of balancing work and family. In terms of, I do, like a lot of men, have a tendency to want to focus on the work, and sometimes the family suffers as a result. But this year, I decided I want to focus more on the family, and be more conscious with spending more time with family. And COVID has really helped with that, to be honest. And I think I'm finding that doing that gives me more balance in myself and mentally as well. So, you know, when it's time to spend time with family, I do that and I'm present for that. And when it's time to work, it's time to work, and I work. And I feel that that's important, and it's an important balance. And sometimes it gets out of balance because there's a project to complete and do that. But I think coming back to that balance, it's been really great during COVID to be able to take a break in the middle of the day. And we've got a 9-month-old daughter, and take my daughter, go for a walk around the neighborhood for half an hour. It feels good. I know it gives my wife time to be without the baby and do other things. And, then stop the work day, cook for the family, eat with the family, spend time with the family. I just feel like I feel more alive doing that than the other way around, where I'm just focusing on so focused on the goal that I forget that the energy comes from being with the family as well.
Wow. And then that's I love that, man. I think we can all learn from that. You know,
you keep learning, right?
Yeah.
Keep
So
learning.
keep
What
learning.
was the other question?
I wanted you to talk about mentorship and leadership in your life. You know, how do you value mentorship? Let me ask that way.
Oh man, it's everything. I have several mentors. I feel lucky to have several mentors in different fields, and I meet regularly with them, and it's the world of a difference between when you have mentors and when you don't. When I don't have mentors, it's easy to lose sight of myself, because I think we live in an age of overwhelm. There's so much information, right?
Right.
And it sometimes gets hard to know what to focus on. But having the mentors always brings perspective, because they can see me, and they can see when I'm losing track of who I am. And if there's an opportunity, I tend to be somebody who likes to follow new opportunities. Then I can have a mentor who sees me, but also sees the opportunity for what it is, and can bring that to me, and then I can confront the truth of what's happening there. It's huge. I think it's worth having 3 or more mentors at any one time, and they change with time depending on what's happening and so on. But I think it's everything for your own leadership.
And then what type of leadership do you prefer? Do you prefer like transactional, transformative, servant leadership?
Goodness me, what are all those things? Isn't leading just being at the front and others follow?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. Yeah.
I don't know what words you would put. I think I favor a very natural style. Listen to the person, try to understand where the person's at, and lead from there. So I don't know what they call that, but yeah, that's.
So I think you mentioned Steve Jobs earlier on. So what do you think about his leadership?
He was a very good leader. Not my style, but he was very good.
Okay. Okay. So from your own understanding and experience, so what is the secret to success?
Ooh. Can I tell you,
success is not always about money. Success is not always about having things, right?
I'll give you my answer now. And I think this changes over time, and you probably experienced that this changes over time. But I think now my definition of success would be I am content and fulfilled, and I have balance. And I feel like I'm on a journey that is meaningful for me. Yeah. I just made that up, so that's what it is.
I love it. I love it. I expected that from you, though. So that makes sense. Quickly, I want to go back, because I have only one question left for you. I want to go back to the question of technology. It's always like, I wonder a lot, and I think a lot about technology, because technology is more like the tree of knowledge, good and evil. You see what I mean? That if it's not handled the right way, technology can be bothersome at the same time, can be dangerous, right? But if it's handled the right way, technology can be something that is wonderful to all of us. I want to pick your brain on that, on where you're seeing technology going right now. I can think about Elon Musk. He has this thing called Neuralink, right? Where you have this little chip that you put on your scalp, and then it taps into your neurons.
Yeah.
I guess there are some good ways that program can help humanity, but I don't see if it can help humanity in the next 20 years or so.
Right.
I think we have progressed into something that is pretty dangerous. I don't know. I mean, like, I just want to pick your brain, not based on what I'm telling you about Elon Musk, but just on technology, you know?
Can I be a little provocative?
Yes, please.
So I have a much broader view of what technology is.
Okay.
I think technology is the means by which we get things done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, you grew up in Botswana, right?
Yes.
Did you hear stories of people that would travel, instant travel between places? You did?
Yes.
You think it's true that they did?
Well, I think it's true in some ways, though. I don't know, but I don't know if I want to say some of it was demonized, so to say, like this is like witchcraft, right? But when I was growing up, I heard stories of like these kids. I remember this kid, he was brought to the community hall, and he was telling the story that during the night they are traveling.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah. I'm glad you say that, because we grew up in completely different places. I heard similar stories where I was growing up.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that was branded as witchcraft. Mm-hmm. I believe it's technology. Mm. And some of what Elon Musk and those guys are trying to do is trying to capture how to do those things that those guys could do in to move that kid, your city hall. They had a technology. They had a way to do the things that they needed to do. And there were some people that knew how to do it and others that didn't. There were Elon Musks in that society that knew how to do those things. And we've lost a lot of those Elon Musks, right? Wow. Now we're relying on an Elon Musk that approaches it from a different way, but trying to achieve the same thing. So you ask about my view of technology. I think it's broadly a good thing, because ultimately it's trying to get us to do the thing that we're trying to do. And it's hard to do, and there are uncertainties, and sometimes you create things that you didn't intend to create because you're experimenting. But the other side of it is there's other kinds of technology that we have ignored. And that's why I asked you that question about the travel, the instant travel, because there's a technology there that I believe us as Africans are more innately qualified to tap into. When we're not even considering, not even thinking about it. So to the extent that there's people trying to discover that, I'm excited about finding those people. And
that's fascinating, though. Yeah.
I think it makes sense that we should find out how they did it.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Who gets to call it witchcraft? You know?
Right. No, I think Africans.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't even answer your question properly, but you asked me about my thoughts on technology, and I wanted to kind of introduce that thought. Yeah. But I think broadly technology is a good thing. It has its dangers, but I think over time we've shown that, by and large, a few world wars exceptions, we get to a place of managing technology in a way that makes sense.
That's cool. You tapped into something right now. I'm gonna let you go, though. I'm gonna really.
I know.
Your last word, message of hope. Let's play this song. I know you have written about 50 songs. I think you are morphing into a legend, my brother. So I want to hear that song. But first, let us hear your message of hope. Okay, your last word.
Wow. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a last word. I think the message of hope is we are powerful. Let us live in that power and do not surrender that power to others.
Wow. Wonderful. Wonderful, my brother. I love it.
Cool.
So let's do the song, my brother.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you a little bit about this song. So when Sonny said, you want to play some music at the end, I was trying to look through the songs I'd written to see what might be suitable, and I couldn't find anything, so I decided to write something. And this song is addressed to the continent of Africa. Okay, looks like we're in tune. Okay. Africa, land of the free. Africa, land of the clear breeze. Land of the diamonds, for miles going downwards. Land of the jet black skies with billions of stars outshining each other. Celebration, ululation, constellations of nations. Africa, land of the free. Africa, land of the clear breeze. Time has come to grab our freedom. Africa's always been the Garden of Eden. Time to take a bite of that fruit, know the difference between what is good and what is evil. Good is exactly how God made us. Evil is what they said in order to raid us. Our ancestors were right. We have to get up, stand up, and fight. Marley was right. We gotta get up, stand up, fight. Kwame was right. We gotta get up, stand up, fight. Madiba was right. We gotta get up, stand up, fight. Wangari was right. Makeba was right. The children are right. Africa, land of the free. Africa, land of the clear breeze. We make coffee for the world and the world wakes up. Let's make coffee for ourselves. We make coffee for the world and the world wakes up. Let's make coffee for ourselves. We make coffee for the world wakes up. Let's make coffee for ourselves. We make coffee for the world wakes up. The world wakes up, Africa. Land of the free. Africa. Land of the clear breeze. Fight for our minds. We gotta win the fight for our minds. Africa. fight for our minds, a billion minds, oh, Africa.
Wow, 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 wow. The whole of Africa, they need to listen to this song. This is wonderful, my brother. I mean, everybody.
Wow, thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
I appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate the opportunity and such a fun conversation with you. I felt like we could go on forever, so thank you.
I had the utmost joy, man. Thank you so much. Thank you for being part of our program today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
I love the conversation. I love the song. So this is wonderful, my brother. Thank you.
All right, my man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.